Lay. Sir. Yeah. Yeah.
Kane is in the building.
Already the show goes on all night till the morning. We dream so long. Anybody ever wonder when they would see the sun? Just remember when it comes up, the show goes on. Alright, already the show goes on all night till the morning. We dream so long. Anybody ever wonder when they would see the sun? Just remember when it comes up, the show goes on. Have you ever had the feeling that you was being had? Don't that shit that make you mad?
What's up, party people? Welcome to Matchup Zone. Kevin Owens, John Hunt, talking overseas basketball today, and we got a fun one today, John. We have John Karalis. Now, John, man of many talents. First, the editor-in-chief of RedsArmy.com, a Boston Celtics blog. Locked on Celtics, Locked on NBA podcast host. Feature reporter and producer for WNYW in New York City. Also writes for the Celtics for the Boston.com and MassLive.com. And John also, cool thing, played professional basketball for a little bit of time before getting injured, but was able to take us through also Emerson College is, incredible talent coming from Emerson College. So it's pretty cool. We're going to have him on today, John. Should be fun.
That sounds awesome, man. It sounds like my man's got a lot of credentials.
A lot of credentials.
Yeah, so a lot of stuff going on. I'm excited to hear about him. But I hear there's some news on the book front.
Uh-oh. A little bit of news on the book front.
Book update.
That's just fucking awesome. So, again, news on the book front. Pretty cool stuff. So what I'm trying to do is, keep everyone posted. I was going to start blogging about this. Honestly, I was going to start blogging about what, goes into writing a book after you've written it. What's the next step? And we've heard from Dre last week, talked a little bit about self-publishing. So right now, my agent and I were working with knowing it, we know a guy from Triumph Books, which Triumph Publishing is one of the biggest. It's the biggest sports publishing company for sports books. So they took it and they're talking about it right as we speak, hopefully. And although it's probably not as we speak, but this week, and hopefully it will be something that they like. I know, kind of talking about it. The first chapter. I like the prologue a lot. It really sets it up, and I think it throws you into the story well. And then I just feel like I have to go back into my past. So I have to go back to high school just to tell the whole story. I can't tell the story of I was in Greece, or here I was in Kosovo, and people are like, what the fuck? How the fuck did you get what? You need to explain this better. So I think I had to kind of go back in, and I was like, is this too slow? But it really picks up. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, and hopefully Triumph will be able to pick it up and we'll get something going. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, congratulations, man. That's
Thanks.
Friggin' amazing. I mean, we've been talking about this for a while now. So it's great to get some news on it and hear things are really moving for you.
Yeah, hopefully it'll move. And if not, you know what I said? I was like, if nothing happens and they say pass and other publishing companies say pass, and I'll just self-publish it and talk to Dre and be like, all right, how do I do this? I just feel like marketing myself is not my strong point. It's a lot of work to market yourself, and I just don't know how to do it, how to really control that.
Well, Dre was amazing last week when we talked to him about all that stuff. He was really, really like a genius as far as that whole marketing thing. I've been reading his book. It's such an easy motivational read, and but like I said, his is very, very motivational, it's self-help kind of thing. But one of the things that's made our podcast really, I think, kind of set aside from the others, the stories. You said, yours is really based on the stories, and I'm kind of excited to hear some of John's stories today too.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's gonna be a fun time talking to John, but I definitely agree. Dre's very motivational, and I feel like the show combines kind of the motivational and the stories. So it's a lot of fun. But yeah, my book is all about the stories, just crazy satire stories. Like it's not like sad. You're not going to go away crying.
Chicken soup for the
Yeah.
ex-basketball player's soul.
Exactly. It's just like me just telling my story of like funny, crazy, my like, self-deprecating humor. It's fun. So just kind of telling the story of like what goes on in overseas basketball, that like not the stories that you kind of hear about, but the stories of like the other side, like the shit that no one really talks about overseas, like the bad things or the funny things or the crazy things that you don't hear when you're like sitting there looking at a map or Google imaging, Pristina, Kosovo. You're like, I wonder what that's like. Oh, that looks pretty. And then you're like, oh shit. So
yeah, maybe not.
yeah, it's all good.
Well, we can't wait to hear it, man.
Awesome. I'm excited.
All right. Well, let's get John in here and get this interview started, brother.
Sounds good. John Karalis, talking a little NBA basketball to kind of follow your footsteps.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. It sounds cool. It feels like it was a pretty like dumb decision in some ways. So I'm glad that it worked out. A couple of things fell into place. Like timing wise was great, but yeah, that's like the jump off the cliff and hope you grow wings on the way down. Like halfway down, you're like, oh shit, did I do the right thing here? So yeah, I'm glad I have that part of the story to tell.
That's awesome.
And not the like, yeah, now I'm an intern on TV again, starting from the bottom.
So I mean, I feel like every single time that I've read about you or watched video of you, it's always like people aren't really hitting on your career, and which is like you're so wildly successful. Emerson College, like best player to ever go through there, first player to ever play professional basketball. I mean, do you feel like the absolute shit when you go back to Emerson right now? Like, where you just like walk in and everyone's like, "Oh, there he is."
Yeah. No, Emerson's not a school where that's the reaction. I have to reintroduce myself a lot. No, it's cool. It's cool to go back. It's cool because I still live near Emerson. So I'll go back to, I mean, not now. I don't know when they're going to be able to play or whatever. But in general, I'll go back and watch some games. Excuse me. It's nice to be part of something because when I first got to Emerson, we were playing like the Mass College of Pharmacy. Like it was a joke of a program. And then Hank Smith came along. He was our coach, and he kind of changed things. He changed the culture. He changed the types of players we were getting in. And my junior year, we ended up becoming the most improved team in New England. Then we joined a conference. Unfortunately, my senior year, we lost in the championship game, but they won the championship the year after, which is a nice blow to the ego. Any kind of ego that I might have had, it's like, oh, once I leave, you win a championship. Great, thanks. But it was, to look back now, and it was a season or two ago, they went to the NCAA tournament for the first time. And to know that I'm one of the few people that are the foundation of that kind of program, that really means a lot to me. Like I love building programs. I'm not the super team kind of guy, which is fine. Like if players want to band together, but I feel like I'm more Jimmy Butler than Kevin Durant, where as much as I'm sitting here and say like, oh, Heat culture is, overplayed and marketing and blah, blah, blah. But if I were on the Miami Heat, I would be a million times into the Heat culture type of stuff, because that's what appeals to me. I'd rather take a team and be one of the building blocks of that team, going from not in the playoffs to contender. That's always been how I want to do things. So I do have a lot of pride when it comes to Emerson, that program becoming a legitimate program, and having other guys go pro after me. having that be an option and guys realize that that's an option for them.
That is awesome. And I know, thinking back on my experience, I know Monmouth went to the tournament in 2001 when I was there, and then went on a run the year after I left. So I definitely feel that. My dad always told me the same thing that you're saying, kind of like, you were a building block, like you were the reason. And I was like, okay, thanks, Dad. As Monmouth went on a wildly successful, and I was like, shit, that was so fun.
Like, you sit here and you say, like, I want to see something succeed after I leave. But then something succeeds after you're leaving. You're like, well, you could have succeeded while I was there, too.
Exactly.
That was also an option.
Yeah.
But no, it's cool. It's cool.
That's so kind of your story, too, takes you to Greece to play pro basketball. And, I've read stuff where you said, every time you think about it, it puts a smile on your face. I know injuries kind of derailed that.
Yeah.
But kind of take us through your experience coming from Emerson to go and play professionally.
It was weird. It was also like 1996, so it's a different time. There's no like internet. It's not like my parents could live stream games or anything like that. There's no. It was a small team. There's, aside from the jerseys that I have, I don't really have a lot of like scrapbook stuff or anything like that. But so I graduate from Emerson and I think I'm done. Like there's no talk at that point of me continuing on. But my coach reached out to me that summer and said, hey, I know an agent out there and I'm going to put you in touch with him. So from the time, like from around like March when the season ends to like June, I'm thinking I'm just like a rec league guy now. But then he gets in touch with me, and he's puts me in touch with the agent. All of a sudden I'm like, oh geez, I got to get back into shape because I had just stopped. I was like, all right, I'm done. I did the typical basketball player thing where you're like, well, coach isn't telling me to run. Well, I'm not going to run anymore then. That's it.
It's over.
So I had like a quick 15 pounds that I had to take off. But yeah, he, I got in touch with this agent. He found a team out there that needed me. And I just went over there. It was like a quick thing. I didn't go out and try out for a lot of teams. I just had that one tryout. And they signed me. But it was a small team. Excuse me. It was a small team. And in those days, like the way it's structured, the way it's structured, where it's like the A1 and then there's the B1, B2. And the teams, like if you're the best teams get promoted, the worst teams get relegated. So this team was a B1 team that had gotten relegated to B2 that year. And this, if you get hurt or whatever, like they find ways to not pay you your full salary.
Oh yeah.
So, but I'm sure we'll get to that point later. When I got there, is a small town called Nafplio, which was the original capital of Greece. It's about a couple hours southwest of Athens. To get to Athens, you have to take a really scary bus trip that drives too fast on a mountainside road that I felt like I was going to roll over and die, go down the hill like multiple times. But yeah, it was a really nice town. Now I look at pictures of it and it's like tourist crazy, much more modern than it was when I was playing there. But it was really cool because it was like, it's not like playing in Boston or LA. It's like playing in a small town and everybody knows you and you walk around and it's the basketball player is just part of the fabric of it. It's not even like they look at you and like, oh, the basketball player. You're just like part of it, you know? So there was this one restaurant that we could go to and just sit down and eat and leave. And you know, we ate for free. So they knew me very well. And it was just really cool to go there and experience that.
I love what you said about being part of it. I think that's if there's like an ideal way to talk about like what it's like to be a basketball player overseas, you're just part of it. Like you're not, like you said, it's not like the fans are obsessed and you go out in public and they're like, it's like, you know, if you saw LeBron at ShopRite, or like, you know, a supermarket, people would be like, holy shit. But like, it's not like that. It's like you go shopping and they're like, hey, how are you? Like, and just like talk to you like you're like the friend on the street. Yeah.
Or tell you what you should be doing on the floor.
Those are fun too.
Yeah. Hey, why don't you pass it over there? Okay, gotcha. Thank you. I thought I hit that shot, but okay, yeah, I'll pass it next time, buddy.
It's basically like in broken English. You not shoot? Why? I'm like, oh my god.
The funniest part is when I was at Emerson, I was always called the Greek, and when I get over to Greece, they call me the American. And I was like, identity crisis. Like, all right. I mean, part of why I was there, part of why I was able to play there is because my parents are Greek. Mm-hmm. They're from there. So I don't know if these are still the rules, but you're allowed 2 Americans on your team. Yep. But I counted as a Greek. So they allowed, you know, that was a little added appeal because you could still add 2 more Americans if they wanted to, which they didn't. I was the only one at that point, but could still if they want to.
That's crazy because I know my grandma was Belgian, but because like my family history, like my family was, my dad was adopted by my grandparents when he was a kid. Although my grandma was Belgian, because of that, like non-bloodline, like they wouldn't let us have passports because my brother and I both applied for Belgian passports to have that same experience where you could, you know, play and you're not an import. And that word import, obviously there's a lot more imports that are allowed on certain leagues. I think, you know, Italy has like, you know, 6 limit. The big time, like Greece, I think has it. But like, you know, with the smaller market teams, like they just don't have it. It's just not in the cards to pay 6 Americans, you know, 6 American salaries. So that was always a bonus. So that's really cool that you were able to go over and like have that experience of being like the Greek, like you said, the Greek American when you're really the American Greek.
Right. It was funny. I got into trouble like almost right away.
That's always a good start to a story.
And I don't know why. All right, so we had a couple of days off. We had played a game. We had the weekend off, and we were back on Monday. Because you know the schedule overseas, you play 1 or 2 games a week. We didn't have another game until like that Wednesday or Thursday. So we had a couple of days off. So on that Saturday, some of the guys were like, hey, there's this club just outside of town. Let's go. I was like, shit, yeah, let's go. Let's go clubbing. And it was this awesome, like, open air club. So you're just sitting there. It was like, that was the pro athlete experience. That was like sitting in the back, sitting in the corner, getting a bottle of something, people coming up, wanting to talk to you, but you're like playing it cool. And, you know, then you look up and you got like the stars and this big Greek sky. And it was like so awesome. And because you take your afternoon naps, you're up till 3 or 4 in the morning.
Yep.
That's, you know, that's the basketball lifestyle anyway. When you're basketball life is up till 3 or 4 in the morning. Even as a writer right now, I'm up till 3 in the morning on a game night because that's by the time I'm done writing and podcasting, that's when I'm done. So that was the life. So whatever. We went. It was a Saturday. I came home. Didn't do anything. I no fight, no nothing. Sunday was a day off. Monday we go into practice. I wasn't late. I wasn't hungover. I wasn't sick. But the coach was pissed that we were out. And it was funny because he was like, blah, 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 all this Greek. And he was like, and then this guy, and the American over at the club, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, what the hell? What did I do? I just went out and had a nice night. But he was pissed. He was like, we're trying to do something, and, it looks bad when you're out. Like, so that's how my pro career started.
It's so crazy because I mean the narrative of the athlete has changed so much since then, because obviously, covering a professional sports team, you hear that a guy's out the night before a playoff game, you're gonna be like, what the fuck, dude? Like, come on, like, get it together.
Yeah.
But like it's like a part of the culture. It's part of like, the world we live in. So it's funny to kind of be like, we don't play again for a long time. But I've had experiences still the same thing, like where guys were just kind of like, why are you out? And you're like, we don't play for like 6 days. Like, I can get my body back ready.
Yeah,
like,
no?
We're all good. We have to enjoy this. It's crazy. Some countries who are like all about it, and some are just like, nope, you're not going anywhere.
They were very upset about that, which sucked because that was a great club. I would have liked to have gone back, but I only went that once.
It's like, all right, I'll see you guys next week. And then be like, never mind. Just kidding.
Sorry. Enjoyable part of my life that I can't enjoy.
So going back, I mean, I know we're kind of getting into the bad side of professional, but because I feel like I always dwell on this, and people are like, dude, you had this great experience. And I'm like, I did. And, played 8 years, and it's just like awesome and such great places. But I'm like, still, you're just like, some places sucked, and like, the money, and like you said, like you get hurt and they're just shipping you out. Like I was in Korea, got hurt, contract said they pay me the rest of the salary. They're like, sent me home. They're like, of course, you get everything and we'll send you money. I get shipped out. I go home. I'm like, hey, okay, so here's the MRI that shows my knee's fucked up. And they're like, who? Like, wrong number. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Right. Yeah, that was the worst part of it. I feel like I love everything basketball gave me, and I would never take any of it back. But there is a part of me that kind of wishes that I was that age now, when
I totally agree.
There's more advanced medicine and people take it more seriously, because a lot of, like, Emerson didn't even have a full-time trainer until my junior year. My high school didn't have very good training facilities, and this pro team had none as well. Like they brought somebody in to give you a massage once a week. And that's basically it. It was wild now that I think about it. Like, just a bunch of guys sitting there, like, lining up, smoking their cigarettes, waiting to go have a massage. Smoking, very big back then in Greece. Still big in Greece. But, yeah, when I got hurt, there wasn't a lot of, like, advanced medicine. So the first thing that happened to me is I tore a quad. I tore my left quad, which sucked. That hurt. And I tried to come back too fast from it. I ended up hurting my back because I'm trying to compensate for the left leg hurting, and that's my dominant leg. I'm right-handed, so that's my jumping leg. And then I ended up hurting my back, and that's what derailed me. And I had, in college, had gone through some injuries too. I still have a chronic patellar tendonitis thing that bugs me if I don't manage it. So that's why I only played that one season, because the injuries, I was just done. And if they weren't going to pay me, then what the hell was I doing there? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to stay there in rehab. And if I can't rehab there, then I'm not going to be able to try out for another team.
Exactly.
And I basically looked at my career at that point, and I don't know if this was the right decision or not, but I said, look, I'm not going to get rich off of this. This is okay money, and they're paying for me, they're paying for my housing, they're paying for my food, so I only need some spending money. So it's not going to, it's not a big deal. But I'm also not in the NBA. I'm not going to parlay this into anything in the NBA. I knew where I was as a basketball player. Like, that was as high as I was going to go. I think the injuries just mentally knocked me down to a point where I was like, why am I going to kill myself to just do this? Let me just go home and start my broadcasting career. So that's the decision that I made. But if they had better facilities, maybe I could have, if they had an actual trainer and an actual doctor that could have looked at what I was doing and gotten me healthier and had me train specifically to deal with those injuries, then maybe I would have made a different decision. And now looking back on it, you know, living in Greece and playing basketball is really not the worst thing. I could have delayed my other career a little bit, but also like part of what they weren't doing, paying me, was I had worked out a deal where they were supposed to wire money back to my mom.
Yeah.
And so part of me doing this was taking care of my mom, who needed some extra help, and they weren't doing that. And I found out they weren't doing that, and that really pissed me off.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I was eating for free. I was living for free. I didn't really need much out there. Everything was pretty much taken care of. I didn't need a car because I lived 2 blocks from the facility, and everybody was really nice. If I ever needed anything, I could get it. But when I found out that they weren't sending back money back home to my mom, then I was like, well, now I'm really not achieving what I want to achieve here. So like, you know, that played a role into my decision to leave as well. That's
a crazy story. And I mean, obviously, those decisions, I always think like NBA players, it's tough for an NBA player to leave their sport with regret. I think, you know, you're in the NBA, like some guys can be like, well, I wish, like Barkley, I wish I beat Jordan in the championship. Some guys can always say that, but you know, you're in the highest level of basketball ever. I always think there's always some level of regret, or could I have done this different? Or, you know, if I played in this era, like overseas, I think that's like the biggest, everyone I talk to, I say the same thing. Like if I did this, if I didn't go here, if I didn't go here, it's an interesting thing. Cause I feel like that's one common denominator amongst overseas basketball players is we're all kind of like, you know, if I had, could I have, would I have?
Yeah.
You're kind of like some of those guys on the cusp of being that 15th guy or 12th guy in the NBA roster. You're like, could I?
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of regret.
I think, well, because we're all competitors, first of all.
Yeah.
So we all want to go out on our own terms. Like we all want to go out by saying like, hey, you know, I got, you know, I was the best, or like I was like, you don't want it to be something that forces you to make that decision. You want it to be like, you know what? I've done everything I can. I'm done. I'm good. And I can say that. I certainly can say that. You know, when I was in high school, my first 3 years in high school, I was terrible. My freshman year in high school, I was absolutely the worst basketball player on the planet. Like I couldn't make a layup. Left-handed layup was like when they told me trying to do a left-handed layup, I'm like, what am I, an acrobat? Like, what are you, left-handed?
What are you asking me?
Yeah. So I have to make sure that I shout out Roger Berard, who was my high school coach, who at that point I was 6'3", and 6'3" in Pawtucket, Rhode Island was like a giant. And he was like, you can't coach height. I'm going to keep you around, and we're going to make you a basketball player. And he took me and made me a basketball player. My freshman and sophomore years, I was terrible. My junior year, I was finally like coming off the bench and contributing to the varsity team. And then my senior year, all of a sudden I averaged like 25 and 13. Like it was just like, boom. But he had connections at Providence College, and he brought in like Jacek Duda, who was their center back then. And he had him come in and play against me in practice and just swat my shit all over the gym. So I could see like, that's the level you need to like get to.
Yeah.
And he had me watching all of the Kevin McHale and Akeem Olajuwon and all of the low post stuff, and he got me playing on the post, and we developed the jump shot and all of that. So to go from that, basically my senior year when I first was like good, to 6 years later, because I took a year off in college, professional basketball player, was like I do have a real sense of pride in that, because I worked my ass off to get there. I always joke, like, basically I was the Bluesmobile. Like, it got me, it wasn't pretty all the time. I put it through hell. I put my body through hell. And then right at the end, it all fell apart. It just all just disintegrated. I think if I tried to continue playing basketball, okay, I would have rehabbed the torn quad. My back issues were fixed. What was the next thing? There would have been a next thing. My body was just like toast. So I can say without regret that I got everything I could out of my body, that I got to a higher level than I ever would have dreamed. But you're right, at the same time, I did want more. Like, I wanted to go there and be like the star player. I was used to being a star player. And to go there and not be a star player, and to have that, because of the injuries, like, not be able to grow into that role. Because, I played primarily on the post, and I would flash in college. So I had a mid-range game, but I wasn't as much of a face-up player. In Greece, I needed to be more of a face-up player. So I really was looking forward to developing that part of my game. And, by the time I was 26, 27, when you hit your actual athletic prime, and I was playing in rec leagues, all of a sudden I figured it out, and I was starting to run like the point in my rec leagues. And I'm like, shit, where was this 3 years ago? I could have used these skills. But so I do have like that regret of, like, I didn't get to develop that part of my game. I didn't get to develop and go out on my own terms in that way to say, like, yeah, it was another challenge in Greece to go from a guy that was coming off the bench and earn a starting spot and become a guy that was like, hey, he went from a center in high school to a power forward in college to a small forward in Greece, and, continuing to evolve his game like that. That really would have been something that I was hoping for. It would have been something that I would have been able to love to say that I did that at that high level.
I think your story is fascinating. I mean, it's. I kind of was in a similar. Didn't really play sporadically junior year. Started senior year, exploded, and because I feel like because my brother was such a good prospect and played at UPenn, I was like, teams were offering me scholarships, and like, we're taking a chance. Like, we've seen what his brother can do. He's just a year or two behind, and I think that's like, you kind of look at like similar stories, and just like sometimes there's like that little barrier, and sometimes there's that little like gift and things like that. And I think it just kind of occurs throughout your careers. Like, sometimes I might get a gift, sometimes I might have a barrier. And I love the hard work though, because that's just what it's all about. I mean, you went through pushed yourself to get to professional basketball. And I feel like there's a lot of guys who just kind of, they're like pissed that they're playing overseas. They're like, I should be playing here. And I like to hear the stories of like guys who are like, listen, I busted my ass and I worked my ass off and I got to play overseas basketball. So that's a really cool story, John. That's just like awesome to hear.
Thanks, man. Yeah, man. I'm sure if I was better, I might have like that other feeling, but there are a bunch of different kinds of basketball players. There are guys who probably should be pissed that they're playing overseas, and this is the thing about like the NBA, there's 450 or so players. There are more than 450 players that are good enough to be in the NBA.
Yep.
And it's such an exclusive club that there are some guys who are better than NBA players, and they may never get the shot to play in the NBA. So I do understand how some of those guys might be pissed that they're relegated to, playing in Spain. But at the same time, enjoy the fact that you're getting to play basketball and you're doing so in a beautiful country like Spain. You know, like it's when you're so close to the dream, because that's still the dream
Yeah.
for everybody. Like I still have actual literal dreams that I'm on the Boston Celtics. But that's the NBA dream. Like every basketball player dreams of that moment. And when you're that close, I can see some resentment, but I was never, ever, ever close to that. And I knew it. I never had any wild dreams of, grandeur. I knew who I was as a basketball player. So yes, I was lucky to be able to get that overseas experience.
So going into now your career now, obviously covering the Celtics, do you ever come across those kind of experiences where a guy, paid his dues, D-League, maybe overseas and finally made it, and you kind of get to see those reactions firsthand? Is that like experience you've had, covering the Celtics?
Yeah, I mean, they had Brad Wanamaker, who is
that's a great one.
He's went overseas for a while and was really good. He was really good overseas. And it's really like I think he's a great example of a lot of different things. I think maybe the biggest is how good you really need to be in the NBA, because he was really good. I think he was playing in Germany. He was really good. Like he was a finals MVP. He was like an all-star. Like he was a really, really good basketball player. And then he comes over here and he's like, oh yeah, he's okay. He's okay. A DNP is not unusual, but like a decent performance. Like, okay, yeah, that was pretty good. Like, but he's good enough. He's one of those guys that's good enough to be in the NBA.
Yeah.
But right now, when this season ends, we don't know what his situation is going to be. The Celtics could make him a qualifying offer and make him a restricted free agent. Should they do that? Probably not. Which would make him an unrestricted free agent. And he's proven that he's good enough to stick in the league, but he's also proven that he's not indispensable. So if teams don't necessarily have a role for him, he's sitting there looking at maybe going back overseas. And that's like, that's going to be tough for him to be here for a couple of years and then like have to go back and look for one of those opportunities. He's another one of those guys that's worked really, really hard. And you can see that he appreciates this moment, that he appreciates what he has. And he really appreciates being around his family and just, he's not somebody that takes this for granted, especially because he knows that he might have to go back to Germany or wherever to finish out his career. I mean, he's in his 30s now. He's 31, 32, something like that. So I'm sure he wants to stick around and make some NBA money, but and I'm sure he wants to stick around and keep his family here.
Yeah.
I mean, he's from Philly, so I'm sure he wants to he'd love to. I'm sure he'd probably love to go back to Philly, and play for the hometown team. But when I say that, and you're wearing your Philadelphia shirt, like, what does the thought of Brad Wanamaker on the team do to you? You probably shrug, like,
yeah, it's true.
Okay.
Like a James Ennis, and you're kind of like a guy like that who played, and you're just kind of like, okay, he's good.
Okay.
He'll come in and hit a shot off the bench, and
right.
But it's
he's
not.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because Wanamaker, didn't he start? Wasn't he starting in the when the Sixers and Celtics series? Wasn't someone hurt and he started like a game? And I remember being
Did he start?
I know he was playing a lot. I was like, man, this guy is like,
he didn't start any of the games, but he was like, he came off the bench and played a lot of minutes. He had a couple of really good games where he played big minutes.
Yeah, that's it's like crazy. Like you're saying, like and I think that's like the NBA. And I try to tell kids, like when I work with kids, I'm like, you're saying 450 guys. about like on an NBA roster, give or take, injuries and stuff like that. And then you have, it's like all these guys overseas, and it's crazy the demand, because on top of that, you get 60 guys every single year who are getting drafted. And so like at least one of those spots is going to be filled by that. It's just so much motion, that like staying in the league, being a guy like a Wanamaker who stays in the league, like even like a Mike Scott, like he just kind of stays in the league and just stays there. That's like an accomplishment in itself, to not be a superstar, but be a guy who's just fills a role every single year and can make it for all of these years on an NBA roster is like incredible to me. Yeah.
I mean, you're right, because we say 450 spots, but so many of those spots are, the guys that, the starting fives are all coming back for the most part, Only a few guys retire a year, and every year is that new crop. So yeah, it's very easy. And that's the Wanamaker story. Like right now, the Celtics have a roster crunch looming. So if they want to be a championship team, they're going to have to open up some spots. They're going to have to get some championship level players in there. And unfortunately, the timing is that Wanamaker's contract is up right now. And so if he had signed his contract, a year later, no problem. And maybe he'd find a niche on a championship team. Mm-hmm. But the Celtics have 4 draft picks that they may have to make. And if they have to make all 4 of those picks, then there's certainly a roster crunch. So the guys like Wanamaker are always hanging by a thread. Mm-hmm. That sort of Damocles is hanging over their head just forever, because you have to – your mistakes are magnified. When you come in, if you're turning the ball over a bunch, then your usefulness is – it drops. If you're not making shots, if you're not defending, like you have to come in and play your absolute best with absolutely no margin for error, or else the team will be like, well, discard you, scrap heap, and your NBA dream is done. It's not like Jason Tatum, who can have the season that he had, but people forget, like in the first part of the season, he was blowing layups left and right. Like he missed a ton of layups in October, November, December, to the point where like he said, he stood in front of us in the locker room, was like, man, I suck right now. Brad Wanamaker does not have the luxury of being able to say, I suck right now. Yeah. He has to be good. And that's a lot of pressure on a guy. And it. Anybody who's played the game knows it. If you can't handle that level of pressure, if you let it get to your head, then you start thinking when you're shooting and you're not shooting. You start thinking on the floor. And the second you start thinking on the floor and doubting yourself, you are toast and you can spiral really quickly. So I have a lot of respect for guys at that level, the Wanamaker types, because I know how tenuous their position in the league really is. Mm-hmm. And to go out there and perform well, find a role, play that role is remarkable. More remarkable than any fan really realizes.
I totally agree. The great point. The superstars get a pass almost. I mean, they can play like I just know the Jason Tatum situation because I had him on fantasy this year, and he was like okay, and I was looking to trade him, and then right before the bubble burst, or like before like everything went up, he was killing it, and I was like finally like started rising in the rankings. I'm like, why am I doing so well? I was like, oh shit, Jason Tatum's averaging like a triple-double every night.
Yeah, like he snapped, like things snapped into place. That's the luxury you get. You get to figure it out. Some guys you get to coast. Some guys you get to have your 4 for 22 shooting night. That's just because that. First of all, he knows his position is fine. Like he's not going to get benched. He's not going to get cut. And the team lets those guys figure it out. That's just how it is. It's not everybody has that level of skill. Mm-hmm. That's why Brad Wanamaker is in the position that he's in. He doesn't have Jason Tatum's level of skill. When you have, and that applies to everybody. Yeah. There are certain sports writers that you're going to have a bad column every once in a while, but they're so good that they get a pass. And there are some writers who are, if you're not bringing it all the time, you're going to get cut just like a basketball player again. You'll get fired and you'll have to find something else to do. So that applies across the board. So yeah, the stars in every industry everywhere pass.
This is I feel like John and I talk about this a lot. I feel like we start the show and I'm like, okay, let's talk all overseas basketball. We end up almost like transferring to like what happens after basketball. And because I'm like obsessed with what happens like in that transition from, professional basketball into like life. And that's like always been something that I like wrote about it. I talk about it a lot because there's the stories, like look at Delonte West. I mean,
yeah,
like what Mark Cuban's doing to help him out. But like you have that story and then you have a story of, guys who were in big business and made the right moves and suddenly are, making more money doing this than ever. Like even like a Jordan, like Jordan's making more money off his sneakers than he ever made playing. And it's like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But, oh no, go ahead.
I look at basketball as like a microcosm of life, like everything. And this is why, like, I love the game. A lot of people say they love basketball and I love it, but I love the game for so many different reasons. And it's because of what basketball did for me. It's not that I just love the game and I love the nuance of, the different types of screens that you're setting and the different adjustments that you're making in the series and all of that stuff. That's all great. I love the athleticism and all of that stuff. But I love basketball for the person that it made me become, the person that I've grown into, the lessons that it's taught me that translate into life, like understanding the work that you need to do, understanding that sometimes you need to be a good teammate, sometimes you need to be in charge, sometimes you need to be the captain, sometimes you need to let somebody else take the reins. And when somebody's hot, you feed that hot hand, and when you lose, how to lose. Maybe one of the best lessons that basketball has taught me is how to lose. Mm-hmm. Because you're going to lose in life. You're just going to lose. And how do you lose? How do you take the lessons from that? Did you give everything that you could, and did you just get beat by somebody? And sometimes you have to accept, like, I worked my ass off. I played this guy as hard as I could. The buzzer sounded, I am drained, and the scoreboard says they won. And you're like, shit. But I can leave the floor and say, he was better than me. All right, now how do I become better than him? Or did I do something wrong? Did I have a bad game? And, do I have to look at myself and say, I've made these mistakes. I have to correct these mistakes. And I owe it to the people around me to own up to, like, hey, this one's on me. Like, I owe my teammates, and now I owe my coworkers, like, hey, you know what? I screwed up. This is my fault. I'll be better. Those lessons, those things that translate to life, that's why I love basketball. And that's why I love the experience that I had. Even though the stuff that we talked about before, the regret and all of that, that's all part of it. That's all part of it. And that's part of the journey and part of the life and part of the experience. So when we talk about things like what happens after basketball, like I almost don't even see it as after basketball. It's still all basketball to me. That's why I'll forever say that I'm a basketball player, because this is all still basketball to me.
I totally agree. And kind of jumping into that, into my final question, which is, you're a sneakerhead. You know sneakers. I'm 40 years old and I like rock. I have like Kobe's, I have Jordans. Like, I still rock sneakers.
Yeah.
All the time. I always wondered because like I looked at a website and they're like, what do you dress like when you're 40? And like they're like no longer wear sneakers, and I'm like, F that. Like,
No way, man.
so I was wondering, you're a sneakerhead. Like, am I good wearing continuing wearing my Jordans, continuing wearing all those for as long as I wish?
Absolutely. Look, I'm 47, so I still wear my sneakers. So I'm certainly not going to tell you to not wear yours. Maybe some of what I wear has to evolve, but the sneakers, I'll still wear the sneakers, man.
Mm-hmm.
I love what I don't do anymore is I don't chase the drops. Whatever. If I'm not buying into like the hype as much anymore. I like what I like. And basically I can live with a closet full of, 1s, 11s, some Air Force Ones.
Yep.
The staples. But I probably have like 10 different Jordan 1 colorways in my closet. And you mix those in with whatever you're wearing, and you're good, man. You're good.
All right.
Don't ever let anybody tell you not wear your kicks, man. You earned the right. You earned the right to wear those kicks. You put in the blood, sweat, and tears.
I feel like that's what I always say. Like, I'm always, like you were talking about, I'm always going to be a basketball player. It's how I'm going to be identified with, even as I age, and I'm done with basketball, even though you still, obviously involved in coaching and stuff like that, but I'm always going to be a basketball player. So I'm always going to dress like a basketball player. I'm always going to keep the roots of how I dress when I play basketball into my wardrobe. So I love, hearing you say, like, once you're a basketball player, you're always going to be. It's never going to just fade from your existence. And that was really cool to hear.
Yeah. I'm around the NBA a lot, obviously, because it's my job. I know that all of us who have played at a high level, the difference between us and the NBA players is just fast twitch muscles,
Mm-hmm.
God-given ability. And, I worked just as hard as any basketball player has ever worked. And you probably did too. And a lot of it, you don't reach any level of professional basketball without putting in that work. I just didn't have, like, my vertical was okay, but it wasn't 40 inches. It was like about 30. I could run the 40 pretty quickly, but I couldn't run it as fast as these guys. Like, the one common thread between all of us is that we put in the work. Now, those guys, Jason Tatum puts in the work and he becomes an NBA player.
Uh-huh.
I put in the work and I become a low-level player in Greece. But it doesn't mean that I didn't put in the same work. I put in that work. And that's what, when basketball players, this is like a fraternity of ours.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know what it takes. We know the double sessions. We know getting into the weight room when you do not want to lift those weights. We know getting up those shots when somebody's waiting for you and you're like, I got to finish. I got to finish on 10 makes. I can't leave the court without making those 10 makes. And it's still something that I think binds us all. If I know that you were a basketball player and I know that you reached any sort of level, I know that you put in the work. And that tells me a lot about you, just knowing that you did it. And so I think that there's a bond there that we all have and that we all understand. So that's why we get to continue to call ourselves basketball players, because we've put in that work, and I think we earned it.
I love it. John, this is awesome. This is such a fun interview. It was so fun sitting down talking with you. When all this craziness ends and, you're ever in Philly, we got to get together, grab a beer,
absolutely, man.
Catch up. It's awesome hearing your voice. It's inspiring stuff. And I love, just the passion for basketball. It's awesome.
Thanks, man. Yeah, for sure. Next time I'm in Philly, I'll let you know.
Absolutely. It's great talking to you, John.
You too, man.
Thanks, man. Bye.
All right. So awesome stuff tonight. Joined by John. John, it's so funny because John, I'll like look up at you a few times and like you had said before, like I feel like you love basketball. Like obviously you had it in your family, but it wasn't like this passion. And now you're kind of like looking at it and seeing all these stories. And I can almost I looked at you at one point and you're just like, it seemed like I could just see you just like, holy shit. Like it's like pretty cool to kind of get that experience, to hear all these crazy stories. Cause it's like, it is like, I think John said, it's like a fraternity.
Yeah. It's like, I always feel a little bit on the outside looking in, but then you guys always, like we've said with this podcast, it always gets brought back to that philosophical, like where are we in life, like as John was saying, some people just they want it but they don't want to work hard.
Yep.
And I just see that all the time in my life, my personal life and my professional life. Like some people don't want to work hard, but if you want something, and I'm all jacked up still on Dre's book last week or whatever, like I'm just like, bust your ass. If you want something, you go out and you get it. You make your life better yourself. You don't just say you want it. You got to go do it. And that's something, as John's saying certain things, I'm like, yeah, I say that to my sons.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to be hard workers. If they do anything, I want them to be able to read and add some stuff together or whatever. But I just want them to have a drive. I just want them to do something. I don't care what they do. Just do something.
That's good. It's fun hearing the passion of just like sports and just the passion of life.
Yeah.
I think this podcast is really fun. We love doing it. Everyone, thank you guys for listening and, continuing to be there and support us in this podcast. And we're having a lot of fun doing it. And I feel like it's just like, it's like life, like motivating to kind of sit down and hear these stories. It makes you a better person. So I'm getting...
Anyone can sit down and listen to this podcast. I said, I'm not an overseas basketball player. I was a baseball player in high school and then became a musician or whatever, but I think anyone can get something out of it, man.
I love it. Well, as always, DJ John Hunt, thank you guys. Thank you so much. You rock putting this all together again. Most people don't know that John is actually the fabric what's holding this whole podcast together, because I literally will talk to each other a lot during the week, work together. And then we just kind of pop on, and it's like I just literally at 11:50 I pop on, and boom, here I am. Like I'm ready to go, and John has set everything up, done all the legwork. So great job, John.
I appreciate it, man.
It's awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening this week. Thanks to John Karalis for hopping on and talking, telling us his story, and thank you guys all for being here and keeping on tuning in. We'll keep this going. We'll see you guys next week.
Who else really trying to with Hollywood Code? I'm with Marley G, bro, flying Hollywood chicks to my Hollywood shows. And I wanna tell you something that you probably should know. This that Slumdog Millionaire Bollywood flow. And my real friends never hearing from me. Fake friends write the wrong answers on the mirror for me.